Can you talk to us about the policy guidance and review focus of your report? It wasn't focused on major reforms, but it was informing policy.
In the Margaret River fires, there are a number of houses lost. Up to 50 homes were lost. And as I say in the report, you can't distinguish between a holiday home and a home that's occupied. I mean, a home is a home, whichever way you look at it. And the burning program meant that the area hadn't been burnt for a number of years, and this prescribed burn, this policy was to do a prescribed burn since 2006. And how they establish their priorities is really by the age of the fuel and the proximity of the fuel to settled areas. So in other words, if you've got a settled area where the fuel load is quite old, then that's a high risk. And so they have a risk profile that they apply to discern which fires that they will do first. In making it a decision to do the Margaret River prescribed burn, they were obviously weighing up risks, and so this inquiry focused on that decision making. What was the risk of doing a prescribed burn near a settled area weighed against the risk of doing nothing? And when you look at the detail that the prescription contained, there was a lot of detail about the preparation they had done in understanding the vegetation, I guess the take-up rate of a fire that the vegetation would have provided, and they took the windows of opportunity they thought they had to try and get the burn done, but clearly in their risk decision making, they didn't account for all of the risks, and so the focus of the inquiry was on those decisions and on their risk management strategy. And there is an international and national standard on risk that is applied to government and non-government agencies. And so I was interested to see how their risk management practices and procedures compared with the international and national standard that's adopted by Australia and New Zealand. That's why the focus was more on decision making and more on the risk management matrix, as opposed to another facet of the inquiry that you might have gone down the gamut of prescribed burns, whether they're a practical and useful strategy to protect vegetation or not. The government deliberately did not have prescribed burning as a term of reference, so I didn't look at prescribed burning per se. It was important to look at it in the sense that it was a prescribed burn that caused the fire. The government also, in their terms of reference, restricted to one fire, and as it turns out, there were 3 prescribed burns in the area on the day in question, on the days in question. In fact, there were 5 in the region. That to me was too important to ignore. So I did ignore it in relation to what is known as the Prevley fire, because the Prevley fire meant that there was a split of resources when the fire escaped its perimeter, and a split of resources meant that more critical decisions had to be made. And the volunteer firefighters needed to be engaged much earlier because there were no resources available. And what I wanted to do is go right back and say, well, where were those decisions made? Who made those decisions, and why were they made? What was the criteria for those decisions, whether they're sound criteria or not?
That beautifully encapsulates the second assignment that the students will undertake, which is basically selecting an incident and looking at the critical decision points and the information that the decision maker had at that moment. So thank you for that.